They discovered the most dangerous giants of the Bible and their shocking secrets revealed. Few knew what truly happened that night. Deep in the shadows of ancient history, giants roamed the earth, striking fear into the hearts of men. The stories whispered through hushed voices. Some said they had skins tougher than leather, each sinewy muscle a testament to their strength. Others claimed they towered above the trees, casting long shadows over entire cities in the land of Canaan, a place where the dust of the earth mingled with the scent of olive trees. David faced his greatest fear. The air crackled with tension as he stood before the massive figure of Goliath. Towering at nearly 10 feet tall, with a voice that boomed like thunder, he challenged the armies of Israel daily. The soldiers trembled, their resolve melting away in the presence of such a beast. History would not remember this skirmish lightly. What dark magic sustained Goliath? How had he come to be? Yet, beyond the myths and tales, there were truths hidden beneath layers of history. Unexplained miracles surrounded these giants. Women spoke of mysterious births, monstrous beings emerging from the wombs of unsuspecting mothers. These beings, half man and half something darker, stirred questions that sank deep into the heart. Were they a curse sent from above, or a consequence of humanity's unquenchable thirst for power? As David picked up the stones from the brook, the weight of destiny pressed on his shoulders. Each stone felt more than a weapon. It was a beacon of hope against the darkness. The air grew thick with anticipation, life and death hanging in the balance. What would burst forth from this moment? Would David's bravery unveil hidden dangers? Or would he awaken something far worse than the giants themselves? The sun dipped low, casting a crimson glow over the valley. An eerie silence enveloped the scene. Onlookers held their breath. The fate of nations stood poised at the edge of a single, decisive moment. Would the hero rise, or would he fall into the depths of giants' legends? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The Valley of Elah held its breath as two forces circled one another. A boy, barely a man in stature, stood poised against the embodiment of fear. David, with his rugged sandals caked in earth and his heart pounding a steadfast rhythm, faced Goliath with both trepidation and resolve. The world watched, but beyond the distant eyes of soldiers and the whispers of anxious hearts, an unseen realm stirred. Thick with anticipation, Goliath's breath, a constant low growl that rumbled in the depths of his broad chest, echoed through the valley. His voice, a deep bellow, shattered the uneasy silence. Am I not a Philistine, and you servants of Saul? Choose a man, and let him come down to me. His eyes glimmered with a challenge that seemed to pierce through the very soul of all who beheld him. David took a step forward. The weight of the stones in his pouch felt lighter than the burden of destiny on his young shoulders. Each pebble, finely shaped through years of practice, symbolized not merely his intention to fight, but a deeper significance, the hope of a nation trembling under oppression. Yet, there remained an ominous thread woven within the fabric of their tale, a realization that these giants were not just warriors of flesh, but manifestations of something darker, fear made tangible. What shadowy forces had orchestrated Goliath's existence? His monstrous size, often attributed to rumors, hinted at celestial manipulation. Some spoke of ancient prophecies foretelling the rise of these giants, brought forth by the very fabric of sin woven into the tapestry of man's choices. Could it be that Goliath, in all his terrifying splendor, was but a reflection of humanity's own bloodlust and ambition? As David approached the battlefield, he heard the distant murmurings of the crowd blend with the aching whisper of the divine. You fight not just a man but a monstrous legacy, urged a voice deep within, echoing through his heart. It was as if the Almighty himself stood beside him, cloaked in wisdom, guiding his mind toward the untold depths of his journey. With every step closer, David envisioned the faces of his kin, their fears, and hopes merging into a cry for redemption. The air, thick with palpable tension, bore witness to the inner conflict brewing within him, the desire to protect, to claim victory, and yet the nagging questions that lingered unspoken. What if giants were not solely defeated on the battlefield, but within the hearts of men? How many more awaited their reckoning in the shadows of their own fears? As he reached the edge of the valley, David paused, allowing the silence to envelop him. The sword of Goliath gleamed ominously under the feeble glimmers of fading light, a reminder of the perilous journey ahead. Would he, a young shepherd with faith as his shield, yield triumph in the face of terror? Or would he awaken sorrows long buried, forces that could consume not just him, but all those he aimed to protect? With his hand trembling, David gripped a stony, simple, yet profound gesture that signified the complexity of his mission. A question lingered in the air, heavy yet unresolved. Could the true giant to conquer be the one within himself, the struggle beyond flesh and blood? As David stood on the precipice of this great moment, unseen shadows stirred, weaving through the valley like ghosts. The night air was thick with expectation, and the hearts of the Israelites, wrapped in fear, beat with a collective urgency, privy to the weight of this confrontation. Yet beyond the visible realm, battles raged in dimensions unseen, a conflict between the forces of despair and the flickering flames of hope. Goliath, towering before David, was not merely a giant in stature. He was a potent symbol of the darkness that loomed larger than life. His very presence to the Israelites was an embodiment of a deeper evil, one that sought to grasp the hearts of men, tempting them to abandon their faith in the divine. But David, emboldened by the spirits of his ancestors, felt a surge of strength that transcended the physical realm. He sensed that this day was not destined to be merely a hardware clash of arms and armor, but a pivotal moment that could alter the course of their souls. As David laid his eyes upon Goliath, he recalled the stories told by elders of ancient days, tales of men who stood against leviathans and beasts, tales that sang of the triumph of faith over despair. He realized Goliath was just one manifestation of the evil that had shaped the world through generations, and evil that thrived on fear and ignorance. Could it be that such giants walked among humanity, not with swords, but in the insidious form of giants like doubt, envy, and greed? The words of his father, Jesse, echoed in his memory. "Courage, my son, lies not in the might of the body, but in the strength of the spirit." David clutched the stone tightly in his hand, feeling the script of history being inked with every heartbeat. He was not merely armed with a slingshot. He bore the weight of a legacy, a chance to inspire not just his kin, but every soul entrapped by fear. As Goliath jeered and taunted, each word like iron striking stone, David's spirit stirred. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty," he shouted, his voice painting a stark contrast to the growl of the giant. The proclamation was more than an assertion of battle. It was a summons for the divine to intervene in the midst of chaos. The valley, wrapped in an otherworldly hush, bore witness as the unseen began to influence the scene. With every word spoken from David's lips, the battle shifted. The ground beneath became not just a stage for war, but an altar of sacrifice. David's faith, growing stronger than his fear, unearthed a latent power, ancient yet fresh, as if calling forth angels who had awaited the hour of reckoning. Yet in that profound moment, questions sprang forth like wildflowers in spring. If the true giants dwelled within, then would the unfolding battle serve merely to point out victories in the physical, or would it lay bare the need for deeper transformations, a call to arms against the fears that lay buried in their hearts? As David took one resolute step forward, stones in hand, the weight of the world hung not just in opposition between him and Goliath, but within the collective soul of those gazing upon him. Would the very action of this young shepherd become a beacon for those lost in their own battles, illuminating paths to be taken against the giants they each harbored? With the air thick with unanswered questions, a new realization began to dawn. Perhaps the might of David's task rested not solely in vanquishing Goliath, but in awakening the heart of his people to the understanding that true defeat arises only when one yields to the giants within. As the confrontation between David and Goliath drew near, The onlookers stood petrified, their breath caught in their throats as they witnessed the steadfast resolve of the young shepherd. Even the air seemed to vibrate with an energy that stirred deep within their souls, revealing reflections of their own inner battles. The hoarse challenge from Goliath echoed in their minds, a clear taunt that not only mocked David but resonated as a summons for each individual to confront their own giants, those unseen adversaries that loomed large over their lives. David advanced, heart beating fiercely, and felt a divine whisper urging him on. He recalled the stillness of the hills where he had tended his father's sheep, moments of solitude where he discovered the majesty of the Creator amidst the stars, where he learned that faith could quell the fiercest storm. It was in those quiet times that he had forged a connection to the one who knows the heart of man, a source of strength in times of trial. In that valley, David understood that courage was a gift bestowed upon those who would wrestle with their fears rather than surrender to them. He had seen with his own eyes that the greatest evils often wore the guise of stillness, lurking within the shadows of the human heart. Pride, isolation, betrayal, giants as daunting as Goliath, but with a deceitfulness more sinister. Today, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, David proclaimed, his voice a clarion call. It rang out, vibrant with conviction, defying the heaviness sitting upon the edges of the battlefield. It stirred the hearts of men, urging them to remember their own stories, truths that had faded in the face of their fears. The unyielding presence of Goliath beckoned them to rise, to gather their fragmented spirits like the shards of ancient pottery, casting aside doubt to form something whole. And as the armies of Israel stood aghast, yearning for a sign, David raised his stone toward the vast sky, the heavens seemingly drawing nearer as if listening in anticipation. There, in the very fabric of existence, sons and daughters of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob found strength woven into their legation, unbreakable thread connecting them across generations. Suddenly, the air shifted again. A flicker of light sparked within the hearts of the warriors, igniting a flicker of hope that had lain dormant, waiting for such a moment of reckoning. Was it possible that the triumph over Goliath could communicate more than the courage of one boy? Could this instance serve as a reminder of the faith that lingered within each of them, a chance for collective awakening beyond mere flight or fight? David, now attuned to the fluttering hearts around him, considered the weight of his actions. If I am to shed the blood of the giant, he thought, then let it be a cleansing too, a symbol of transformation for my people. The thought stirred something deep within, a gnawing understanding that true victory lay not in the death of Goliath, but in the resurrection of faith that could rebirth broken spirits, forging them anew. He took his stance, the stone firmly set within the pouch of his sling. The world around him faded until only the valley remained, a sacred ground charged with the hopes, fears, and dreams of countless generations. David stood, suspended in a moment that felt eternal, knowing that shadows were not merely to be cast away, but understood reinvented even in the light of divine purpose. Would the victory over Goliath serve to unveil the misconceptions of perceived strength in the lives of each spectator? Would they rise from this moment, emboldened to confront their own fears with the same relentless spirit? And as the stone twirled in the air, the questions hung heavy. Could true courage teach not just the act of vanquishing foes, but illuminate lives burdened by the invisible chains of despair? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the valley, the anticipation grew palpable. Each heartbeat echoed not just in the chest of David, but resonated through the ranks of the Israelites, caught in a spell of collective unease and wonder. There they stood, men clad in tarnished armor, grappling with an invisible weight heavier than their battle gear, awaiting a flicker of hope kindled from the actions of one boy. With unwavering focus, David prepared himself for what lay ahead. The sling dangled in his hand, a humble tool of shepherding transformed into a potent weapon of faith. He remembered the whispered prayers that accompanied him in the fields, the moments when he had entrusted the fate of his flock to the Almighty. Not by sword nor spear, but by the hand of God, he murmured softly, feeling the truth wash over him like a baptism in purpose. As he positioned the stone and began to whirl the sling, Goliath swaggered, disdain written plainly on his features. "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" The giant's laughter struck like thunder, reverberating through the ranks and mocking the very essence of resolve that surged through David. Yet, in that laughter lay a challenge, a provocation to awaken the hearts of the people, stirring them from their slumber. For though they gazed upon Goliath with eyes clouded by fear and doubt, David yearned for them to see who they could become in the face of their own giants. The triumph wasn't merely the overthrow of a physical foe, but an unearthing of the deep-seated terror that clutched at their spirit shadows cast by inadequacy, despair, and unrepentant sin. With every revolution of the sling, he channeled the prayers of his family, his community, and the fervent hopes of a nation. The stone, a simple projectile, anchored within its form the weight of generations longing for liberation from the unseen oppressors that clung to their identities. As David released it, he felt a sanctified surge, a divine affirmation that transcended the battlefield. The stone soared with purpose, cutting through the quiet sky like a harbinger of change. With a sudden thud, the stone struck Goliath squarely on the forehead. The giant staggered, momentarily taken aback, a fleeting glimpse of vulnerability crossing his countenance. But for David and his spectators, a deeper understanding brewed in the moment's intensity. Victory over the tangible was but a mere reflection of conquering despair dwelling in the hearts of many. As Goliath fell, silence blanketed the battlefield. David stood amidst the swirling dust, the expressions around him morphing from shock to realization as the true weight of the fight began to settle. What did it mean for them to see a giant fall? As the implications rippled through the crowd, whispers began. Each person held captive by their own reflections. Their own battles began to awaken. What fears have I allowed to grow large in my life? What giants have I overlooked within? Even as the defeated giant crumpled to the ground, a sense of reverence hung in the air. The ground beneath them was saturated with more than just victory. It was imbued with the spirit of renewal. David surveyed the faces around him, each a tapestry of hope and restraint interwoven with the fibers of their individual narratives. Would the fall of Goliath inspire them to address the fears gnawing at their spirits? Instead of celebrating his victory, David felt a stirring in understanding that the real challenge lay ahead. For what happens when the giants dissipate? What must be confronted when the tangible monster is no longer lurking and the true struggle reveals itself? Shame, guilt, the giants fortified within the soul. As David stood vigilant, recognizing the fragility of newfound faith and the hope taking root, an unasked question lingered in the air like a breath between breaths. Would they rise, emboldened not just to face the giants in the valley, but those hidden, distressing shadows looming silently within? Would they claim their victory not only as conquerors, but as transformed vessels of faith, destined to illuminate the darkness that conquered them before? With the dust still swirling around him and echoes of Goliath's thud ringing in his ears, David stepped cautiously towards the fallen giant. The stillness of the moment was punctuated only by the awed gasps of the Israelites, who had transformed from silent spectators to witnesses of a profound metamorphosis. David's heart surged with purpose, pulsing to the rhythm of a question he could scarcely voice. What now? As he approached Goliath, David felt an odd sense of connection with the mighty warrior now lying prone before him. In that instant, he realized Goliath was more than just a formidable foe. He was a reflection of everything David had ever feared and sought to overcome. Each scar that adorned Goliath's armored body told a story of battles fought not simply against men, but against the shadows of doubt and rejection that thrived in the hearts of all who dared to dream. Extending his hand, David touched the giant's weapon, the massive sword that seemed more like an artifact of ancient dread. It felt heavy, not merely in weight, but in his story a testament to the fears that had dominated his nation for far too long. Yet as he grasped the cold metal, he found himself pondering the profound irony of the situation. A boy with nothing but faith and a stone had vanquished that which had long seemed insurmountable. He pulled back, glancing at the Israelites, their eyes now filled with the burgeoning light of hope. Yet shadows of uncertainty still lingered. At the back of the crowd stood Eliab, David's older brother, his expression a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. David suddenly felt the pressure of the crowd's expectation shift. It was not merely about who would claim victory. It was about what they would do in the aftermath of this victory. Is it enough to conquer the giant of flesh? He wondered. Or must we now contend with the giants of our spirits? An inner tumult began to unravel within David as he recalled moments of doubt that had plagued him before this encounter, the smallness he felt when others scoffed at his dreams of fighting. In the silence, a deeper revelation emerged: the greatest battles lay not on dusty fields, but inside their hearts. If they were to embrace the light after Goliath's fall, they would first need to confront the tangled knots of fear, shame, and inadequacy that the giant had come to embody. If hearing his thoughts, the gathered Israelites began to murmur amongst themselves. Their initial awe began to shift into introspection, a wave of clarity washing over them. What had we allowed to control us? Someone whispered. How many victories had we sacrificed to Goliath's shadow? The air trembled with a complex blend of emotions: fear giving way to awakening, despair slowly morphing into resolve. Yet as David glanced back at Goliath's fallen form, he felt the enormity of the moment wash over him. The giant lay defeated, yet a whisper ran through the crowd that beckoned forth a greater truth. The battle has shifted, but it is far from over. Swiftly, the conversations shifted from the immediate victory to the pressing need for the Israelites to reclaim their trust in the Almighty. They must recognize that Goliath's defeat was a mirror reflecting their inner struggles. In that moment of clarity, a flicker of uncertainty crept into David's heart. The victory over the giant had unlocked a greater quest. Would they rally together, not just as a nation of warriors, but as a community ready to face the lingering darkness within? In this new journey, what giants would they discover hidden in the crevices of their hearts that remained unaddressed? As David stood amidst the rising tide of awareness, one question refused to fade. Would this defeat lead them to a deeper understanding of themselves? Or would they retreat once more into complacency, allowing the truths of their unexamined souls to remain buried beneath the rubble of Goliath? As the echoes of victory lingered in the air, the fog of uncertainty swept through the ranks of the Israelites. David stood amid a swirl of emotions, his heart both lightened by triumph and burdened by an unshakable responsibility. His eyes lingered on Goliath's fallen form, now a lifeless semblance of the terror it had embodied just moments before. The moment felt transformative, yet a sense of foreboding loomed, hinting at deeper challenges that awaited them beyond this singular victory. Among the assembled crowd, voices grew louder. Eliab took a step closer, his brow furrowed with concern. What do we do now, brother? The giant has fallen, but have we slain the fear that lived within us? His voice cracked under the weight of his question. Eliab's gaze was piercing, searching for answers not just in the aftermath of the fight, but in the depths of his own spirit. David, feeling the weight of Eliab's gaze, sensed a growing urgency that transcended the physical realm. We have conquered the embodiment of our fears, he began, yet the true challenge lies in clearing the shadows left within our hearts. With Goliath's defeat, we must now confront the giants of despair, doubt, and disunity that have festered among us. The crowd hushed, contemplating the implications of his words. Could they rally not just against a foe they could see, but against the unseen demons that hovered close? As whispers of anxious agreement rippled through the people, David felt the stirring of something profound within him. This was no longer about a single battle in a forgotten valley. It was a call to cleanse their collective spirit. Let this victory be our beginning, he declared, a point from which we can rise, united not just in strength, but in faith. His voice resonated with clarity, illuminating the path forward. Yet, amidst the fervor, David recalled the solitude he felt while tending sheep, far from the din of battle and praise. It was then that he discovered a reality hidden beneath the surface: the giants of his own heart. They had whispered doubts that seemed weaponized against his aspirations, as if every act of courage came with layers of fear woven tightly within them. What if the real giant I must confront is myself? He pondered, folding his arms in contemplation, for in silent moments, he remembered the night sky when he had frantically questioned his worth, and the reflection that told him he wasn't enough. The truth settled in. Unnerving, yet liberating: fear wasn't an external foe, but an internal adversary. It whispered quietly to every heart present, inciting a collective struggle against emotions no sword could pierce. Determined to empower his fellow Israelites, David urged them to share their truths, to unearth their struggles. Let us not be merely warriors against flesh, but conquerors of our inner turmoil. Each of us holds a giant to slay in silence. Together, we can strengthen our faith and diminish the darkness that creeps into our souls. With every word, he saw flickers of recognition dawning among the faces before him, the acknowledgement of hidden giants. Cloaked in unyielding silence, the murmurings began again. An unspoken resolution took form. They would no longer merely bask in the aftermath of one victory, but would embark collectively on a pilgrimage inward. Hope began to intertwine with vulnerability as they faced the truth that had loomed for far too long. Fear and inadequacy can only diminish when brought into the light of unity and understanding. But as David looked across the assembled masses, he felt the weight of his own unknown battles begin to rise once again. Would they truly brave their own giants? Or would complacency lure them back to the familiar shadows? The power of this moment hung in the balance, with no assurances of victory over what lay ahead. In quiet reflection, as the sun started to set behind distant hills, David wondered, were they prepared to hold fast in their commitment to unearth the most dangerous giants lurking within, or would they choose to ignore the shadows, allowing them to grow stronger while they celebrated their temporary conquest? The murmurs among the Israelites settled into an uneasy silence, a stillness where all understood that a deeper journey was required. David, their youthful champion, felt the reins of leadership tightening around him. As he stared into the faces of his people, he realized that what was ahead would demand more than brute strength. It would require introspection, honesty, and a commitment to face the truth that lay, like an unseen giant, within each heart. Days passed since the great battle, yet the aftermath clung to them as surely as the dust of the valley. They gathered by the riverside, where the waters flowed unwaveringly, a stark contrast to the tumult that churned within. The sight of Goliath's gory defeat seemed to fade, his body now a memory, yet the victory felt weighty with unspent questions. Around a flickering flame, David urged the men and women to share their fearsome, vulnerable sharing that unraveled the tightly knit threads of their bravado. I am afraid, a man confessed, his hands trembling, that my courage was borrowed, and once the cheers fade, I will be left stripped of valor. What if the next time we face an adversary, I am left wanting? This sentiment echoed, cascading through the group like the ripples from a stone thrown into still waters. Another joined. What if my faith falters in the darkest hours? How can I rise again? Caught in this web of heartfelt confessions, David felt both inspired and burdened. Each revelation was a new face of the giants that plagued their spirits. The fears, once cloaked in silence, now danced openly in the light, pulling David further into the depths of their shared struggles. How could he lead them beyond this moment if they remained enslaved to their inner demons? This moment reveals the truth, David said gently, that every challenge we face is multifaceted, and our true enemies lie hidden in our perceptions. We are more than conquerors of flesh. We are seekers of truth. What we face in the world outside us often mirrors the giants that dwindle, yet grow enormous within. He felt an urge to share the wisdom cultivated during his quiet nights in the fields, when he had sought solace in the presence of God, and the stars began to twinkle overhead. They sat in attentive silence, captivated by the stories he wove. He spoke of the valleys of loneliness he navigated, the doubts that gnawed at his resolve, and the moments when silence turned to serenity. I learned to question my fears, to discern whether they were reflections of God's grace or mere echoes of insecurity. Let us not overlook the moments when he vanquished the unseen against the unseen, reminding us of our true fortitude. Encouraged by David's words, a woman with weary eyes rose. And what of our past, David? How do we reconcile with our failures when they seem to sprout like weeds in our hearts? Her voice trembled, yet rang with courage, echoing the communal yearning for healing. Perhaps our past does not dictate our futures. The giants of regret, shame, and bitterness can be transformed into stepping stones toward our growth. He replied, each word a careful bridge leading them from despair to hope. The flickering flame mirrored the flickers of recognition on their faces as the mysteries of their inner lives began to merge. But how do we proceed? Another voice questioned, spurring a chorus of anxious wonder. Do we tackle these giants all at once, or piece by piece? This question loomed in the evening air, yet it carried within it an openness, revealing both peril and possibility. David realized that no single battle plan existed. Just as he had confronted Goliath, they would have to address their fears individually and collectively. The path forward would be labored and long, a journey not of defeat, but of discovery. As night deepened, and they processed the sacredness of vulnerability, David felt the unshakable truth surface anew. Every person bore the weight of their past, yet here among the gathered community encased in shared struggles there lay profound strength. Let us hold fast, for in acknowledging our giants, we shall fashion our path toward healing. As the fire dwindled, and shadows cloaked the gathered Israelites, David's heart resonated with another thought. Unsteady and dim, could they truly fearlessly confront their inner demons, or would the shadows grow ever larger in the absence of light? What if the test of their journey was not merely to confront fear, but to embrace the faith required to walk through the darkness together? As dawn broke over the hills, light filtering through the trees like the gentle grace of God, the Israelites remained gathered by the riverside, a collective soul wrestling with the uncertainties of the future. David was among them, roused by the light but entrapped in contemplation. The fire's embers had whispered their lessons through the night, yet they felt unresolved, as if the flames had merely awaiting their deliberation to fade away. David sensed the weight of silence pressing upon them once more, oppressive yet illuminating. It was a silence that leaned into questions unasked, anxieties unaddressed, a comfort cloaked in fear. Today, he announced, his voice steady yet inviting, we shall delve deeper, together, to unveil the giants that linger within and around us. They formed a circle, the morning air brisk but thick with anticipation. It was clear that David would cultivate their strength from the roots of their shared understanding. What shall we choose to face first? He inquired, a simple invitation for the communal breath of vulnerability to resume. A woman emerged from the front, her eyes bright, with a blend of apprehension and resolve. We must first confront our shame, she offered, the words slipping from her lips like an ancient curse. It haunts many of us, a whispering shadow that reminds us of our shortcomings. The ache of her truth resonated. Many nodded, their own pasts painfully awakening like memories long buried. In our shame, David began, we often overlook grace. We must ask ourselves, what opportunities lay buried within our failures? If King Saul can rise despite his mistakes, who are we to dismiss our potential? David spoke with a passion that ignited collective fervor, though he too felt the sting of uncertainty surround his words. Another spoke up, a sturdy farmer weathered from toil. And what of comparison? We measure ourselves against each other, and in doing so, we forget our unique paths. His hands gestured, as if trying to grasp the air thick with vulnerability. The giants of envy and judgment are perhaps the most dangerous lurking in our midst. David nodded sagely, feeling the truth resonate more profoundly. Indeed, we must strive to recognize our distinct purposes without the weighty armor of envy. Each journey is marked by divine appointments, and one not to be scrutinized against another. He felt a swell of conviction rise among them, electric and hopeful. But to leave behind the past and forgive ourselves? How do we learn the art of true forgiveness? Came a voice, uncertain yet emboldened by the energy of the circle. How can we let go without losing pieces of ourselves that were once intertwined with those moments? That sense of loss is, in itself, another giant, David observed, pacing slowly. Forgiveness does not come easily. It requires a deliberate choice to experience growth through suffering. The process allows us to allow peace in, granting ourselves the mercy we seek from God and from one another. As David spoke, the morning light grew stronger, bathing them in warmth, illuminating their shared vulnerability. It fueled an understanding of vibrant energy within the community, expanding into something tangible yet utterly mysterious. The early listeners became emboldened storytellers, sharing tales of wrongs they had done to others and the forgiveness they sought to find within themselves. David listened intently, realizing their stories weaved an intricate tapestry of collective healing. yet a shadow still loomed just beyond their reach. The whispers of doubt lingered, an intangible anxiety that coiled around the bravest of them. Were these discussions merely salves to scars yet aching to heal? What if we are still bound by our failures and fears? Can our recovery be truly lasting? Or will these giants learn to evolve? Will we ever be free? David questioned aloud, his spirit wrestling with the question that bound his own beliefs and those of his people. Faces turned solemn as they contemplated the nature of their journey, for healing is often accompanied by the weight of resilience. The uncertainties stirred between them, a fine tension, challenging their faith and their resolve. They sought to confront giants, yet understanding loomed like an elusive specter above them, one that whispered of trials that awaited ahead. So, as the morning unfolded with its radiant promise, a profound question lingered in the air like the call of a distant horn. Was the true struggle not merely to confront the giants before them, but to nurture the courage to rise anew after every fall, to redefine what it means to thrive amidst the very shadows they sought to escape? As the morning sun ascended, spilling golden light across the valley, the Israelites remained gathered, hearts and minds entangled in both vulnerability and resolve. David, standing at the forefront of this awakening, felt a surge of emotion coursing through melons of hope, fear, and an almost sacred responsibility to guide a fragile people into a more profound understanding of their collective journey. The whispers of yesterday's battle faded like echoes against the mountains, yet the triumph over Goliath had rendered the ground fertile for growth. As the embers of their previous fears began to cool, new questions ignited within the hearts of many, stirring a hunger for deeper truth. What does it mean to rise from victory, and how would it shape their understanding of faith, resilience, and shared humanity? The dawning realization hovered in the air, like morning mist, a revelation tracing back to that poignant moment in the Valley of Elah. David felt the gravity of his revelation merge with the hopes of his people. Their struggle was not merely against foes of flesh and bone, but an awakening to the adversities lurking deeply within shame, envy, regret, giants as tenacious as Goliath himself. Drawing upon this understanding, David raised his hands, letting them fall softly as he spoke, his voice gathering strength from the love swelling within him. Brothers and sisters, these giants we face are not insurmountable. In acknowledging their existence, we may find the strength to challenge them. The true miracle lies not solely in the battlefield, but in the purpose we forge in our collective hearts. They murmuring began to ripple through the assembly, an electric pulse that ignited a flame of shared conviction. We must embrace the uncomfortable truths that gnaw at our spirits, he continued, leaning into the growing energy of the moment. Let us lay bare what we hide behind bravado. In our honesty lies the arms of hope. Though some faces showed deep reflection, others reflected skepticism. Eliab stepped forward, his brow furrowed and voice steady. But how can we ensure this moment is more than just a fleeting triumph? What if, despite our efforts, we fall prey to our shadows once more? David met his brother's gaze, the weight of their familial bond alive in the air between them. The journey requires commitment, Eliab. Today is not merely about celebrating victory over Goliath. It is an invitation to actively engage in our spiritual evolution. We must nurture one another as we unearth these giants, slaying them not only in our hearts, but also in our community. With this, David took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the heart of every Israelite within him. To transform our struggles into strength, let us share our stories, the truths of our lives, the narratives that have shaped our fears. In inviting vulnerability, we attest to our shared humanity, and therein lies the path toward healing. One by one, the Israelites stepped forward, each voice weaving threads of personal struggles into the tapestry of their collective journey. As stories unfolded under the vast sky, tales of mistakes, losses, and moments of doubt emerged from the shadows, resonating universally. Each confession served as both an unburdening and a healing, accompanied by a chorus of shared empathy that blanketed their hearts. A woman from the crowd shared her fear of inadequacy that had haunted her since childhood, how it crept into her decisions and eroded her courage. As she spoke, tears glimmered in many eyes, the vulnerability illuminating shared insecurities. In that moment, Others began to nod in recognition. They were not alone. Then came a former soldier, the remnants of resentment etched on his brow. I forfeited my future by letting pride control my actions. I was a warrior, but I fought the wrong battles, enemies of the heart rather than the mind. Today, I choose to find that warrior within one who fights against fear. Each story articulated the essence of humanity's fragility, a shared thread that deepened their connection. David felt hope swelling within him, affirming the divine purpose of this gathering. Every tale whispered of a collective awakening. Victory over Goliath brought forth transformations, turning the focus inward to confront the giants, swallowing their joy and freedom. As voices uplifted and sorrows transformed into shared strength, David stepped forth to channel the burgeoning energy. Together, we are stronger than the giants we face. It is our responsibility to support one another, to rise united as a community. What if we forged a new covenant, vowing to hold space for each other's truths, to lean in when the weight of our giants feels heavy? With this idea planted, a shift began to thrum in the atmosphere. Hearts warmed and spirits lifted. The risk of vulnerability birthed a courageous unity, mending invisible divides that had previously kept them bound in isolation. Suddenly, the collective gathering shifted into a circle, hands extended to young and old alike. Each person, now committed to supporting one another, felt invigorated by the prospect of unveiling their giants together. It was an awakening born from a single promise. I see you, and I am here with you. As the sun began its descent beyond the hills, David's heart brimmed with gratitude. This moment, a pivotal transformation for his people, solidified a legacy far beyond the physical confrontation with Goliath. The stories exchanged ignited a fire of hope, penning a narrative of shared courage and strength through the complex tapestry of humanity. Today, David proclaimed, the light of the setting sun casting warm hues upon their assembly. We do not merely defeat the giants. We face them with faith and vulnerability. And in that unity, we choose to rise each day, welcoming both our scars and our triumphs. The giants may return, but so too shall our resolve. Together we shall make a stand, crafting not just warriors, but pillars of faith. As the gathered Israelites nodded, each heart emboldened with romantic hope that dared believe there was power in togetherness. A wave of tranquility enveloped the valley, a reminder that giants, whether of the flesh or spirit, did not define their worth. Their struggles were now teachers, and their stories foraying towards an integral path of healing. With nightfall gently caressing the earth, David concluded, let our lives be the testimony that giants do not fall merely with stones and swords, but with relentless courage, yielded not in isolation, but within the sacred embrace of community. You are not alone. We are forever walking together on this journey of confrontation and discovery. The quiet reverence fell as breath returned to the group, and hearts united in the promise of a new chapter not defined by fear, but by faith that transcended. As they departed, leaving behind the whispers of yesterday, every soul emerged a little lighter, less certain perhaps, but resolutely together in that valley, where fears had once loomed large. Hope danced through hearts as the sun set, painting an indelible picture of unity, a fresh covenant forged. The giants were real but faced not in battle alone. They would be met side by side, with unyielding faith illuminating the path that lay ahead. The night descended, wrapping the land in a cloak of promise, daring all to dream anew.